So recently, I've been thinking a lot about the lathe. Specifically, I've been thinking that as woodworkers, we are underusing these machines. Like, a lot. The lathe is like the heart of the entire industrial revolution. They've made everything possible in our lives. But as woodworkers, we mostly use them for decorative stuff. I mean, we turn some spindles, but that's mostly out of fashion, so we don't do too much of that anymore. These days, it's mostly bowls. And seriously, how many wooden bowls can you really use? How many do you need? This one right here mostly gets used to store my daughter's collection of erasers. Glad I spent several hours carefully crafting it out of a piece of rock-hard oak, because it's doing something really useful now. I think the problem is we're just not realizing the potential of these machines. Bowls and stuff like that are very nice, but mostly they just sit around looking pretty. I think we can do some things with the lathe that are still just as beautiful and just as artistic, but maybe more useful. For instance, my wife and I both use yoga mats when we work out, and my daughter likes to work out too, so we have to have one for her. She's 5. You play along. Anyway, the mats just kind of get thrown in this corner of the living room when we're not using them, and none of us likes the way that this looks. The corner looks sort of sloppy, and it's really hard to vacuum under. So we need something else for this. We need like a rack so we can put them up on the wall, they'll be organized, we can vacuum the corner, and the room will look nicer. And when you roll up a yoga mat, it's round. So if I'm going to make something to hold yoga mats, well, why not do it on the lathe? I can fix the problem of having this cluttered up corner, and I can make something that's beautiful and improves my house, and I'll learn some new techniques on the machine that I think is really underused. Sound good? Maple and walnut always look good together. So I grabbed some offcuts, trimmed them up, laminated them together, and let them sit overnight to make sure I had the best glue joint possible. Then I cut them round on the bandsaw and drilled them out for the right hole so that I could use the expansion jaws on my chuck. These pieces are going to be the main elements of the stand. I'm going to make them like giant napkin rings that can hold the mats. The problem is, I've never turned a ring on the lathe before, and it takes a little bit of thought, especially in terms of work holding and being able to flip the piece around and make it nice and symmetrical. So I get the outside sorted out first. I turn a nice gentle curve on each side, make it nice and even. Then I figure out the depth I need and I turn a rim onto one side. I make it nice and square and I make sure it's deep enough for the next step. Then I change my chuck over to cold jaws and I use them in expansion mode. So I can flip the piece around and grab the inside of the rim with the cold jaws. Then I can work on the other side. Now I could just turn away all of the middle like I was making a bowl, but that would be a waste of time. It's much better to just try and cut a ring and have the center part just come out. So I go in there with a couple of gouges, mostly a parting tool, and just make the narrowest cut that I can, getting deeper and deeper, slowly and carefully so I don't hit the chuck when I break through. And since I do it slowly and carefully, there's a magic moment where all of a sudden, the middle just pops out. I can pull it free, work on the inside, flip it, sand it, put on a little bit of mineral oil, and it's done. Then I do that 2 more times, and I've got the rings I need for my stand. So these rings came out really great. They're exactly what I'm looking for, and I already tested them with the yoga mat, and they fit really well. So now I want to mount these to the wall, but I have a problem, which is that because they're round like this, there's no bearing surface to put against the wall. So as long as I'm over here at the table saw, I'm going to set up my crosscut sled and I'm going to use it to just take a thin slice off the edge of each one of these. And that's going to give me a pretty wide, flat surface that's going to butt up against the wall nicely. Now the problem with that is that it's also going to make the wall of this ring a little bit too thin to be stable. So I'm also going to want a mounting plate that can glue to this and then be screwed into the wall and keep everything sturdy and secure. I'd like that plate to be kind of low profile, just sort of an oval of wood behind the stand. And what I think I'm going to do for that is cut some rectangles of maple, and then, this is kind of an experiment, I'm going to take them over to the lathe, and I'm going to try and turn just the narrow ends of the rectangle into a nice circular shape and maybe put a little bead detail on them. I know that's not going to work perfectly. I'll get a little tear out on the ends, but I can probably sand and file that smooth, and if I'm lucky, I'll have a nice precise piece of wood with a good flowing curve on either side. It should mate up really nicely with these rings and get them ready for mounting. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm looking for. The yoga mats are going to slide really nicely through each of these. They're going to look nice on the wall. They're going to be easy to mount and be symmetrical and pretty. Now, the one thing that I'm concerned about is that as you slide a mat through, there's really nothing except friction to keep it from just falling all the way through. And I don't think that's what we want. There's also going to be a lot of leverage on this one piece if you're sliding a rubber mat with a lot of friction in and out all the time. So I think what we need is like a little landing pad down at the bottom here so the mat slides through and then bumps up against something. So let me grab a couple pieces of maple, cut them quick on the bandsaw, round them up on the lathe. Once I've got the round bumper pieces figured out, I also need some sort of a stick or bracket to connect them together. So I draw something out with a nice gentle curve and shelf on the bottom, cut it out on the bandsaw, clean it up, and then it's time to notch out my pieces so they'll accept the stick. I use the table saw to make a really simple dado across the ring portion and into my round landing block. On the edge of the block, it's no problem, and the little mortise I make comes out nice and clean. But on the underside, the curvature of the blade means that my dado is incomplete, and I have to finish it off by hand. So I use a dovetail saw and some chisels to deepen and square it up, and that's slow going in this hard wood. And then I finally got the bright idea that I should drill out some of the waste. And as soon as I did that, things went way quicker. I went really slowly, taking off small pieces of stock, so that when I put the whole thing together, it had a nice, tight press fit without any glue. That means when I add the glue, I'm going to get a very, very strong joint, and it should hold up for years. So now, the glue is dry on these, and I've put on a coat of boiled linseed oil. Now, I got to get these things mounted to the wall, and I want the mounting to be as invisible as possible. So I'd like the screws to go in underneath this wall bracket right here, and then maybe another one also under here. And if they come up at an angle, then when it's against the wall like this, the screws will be invisible. And so I've jigged up the drill press in order to make this work. I've got the table turned at 45 degrees, which is going to give me the angle that I want. And then I have a stop block here. Then I made a really simple jig. It's just a piece of plywood with another stop on it. And what that allows me to do is bring my piece in like this, and then I can drill the first hole, and then it just slides back and forth against this piece of 2x4, so it's really easy to position my holes anywhere I want. Now, I might not have gone to the trouble to make this jig normally, but I have to do 3 of these things. And when you're doing something like that, it's worth the time to throw together a fast jig and make everything accurate and repeatable. Installing the yoga mat holders isn't super difficult, but it does take a little bit of thought. I started by putting the first one where I wanted it on the wall, and then using an awl to mark all the screw locations. After that, I wanted to make sure I drilled the holes at the right angle, so I had a little scrap of wood that I had drilled at the drill press to make a little drilling guide. I stuck the awl through the guide, matched it up with the prick I made on the wall, and then held it against the wall while I did the drilling. I've got some little pieces of rubber on there that hold it steady while I drill it with the hand drill. Once the holes are in the right place, it's easy to tap in the anchors and run in the holes. Once you have the first one, you can use that to kind of eyeball the location of the other ones. You can get the height by eye, but it's really good to use a level to make sure that they're all plumb. Once I had them all up, I just rolled up the yoga mats and stuck them in. And it came out pretty much like I wanted it to. So the whole point of this video was that I wanted to make something that was beautiful and useful on the lathe, but wasn't a bowl. Because I think we all have enough bowls. And I want to keep going with this project. I think it's going to be a regular series, and I'm going to call it Beyond Bowls. And I'm going to keep trying to come up with interesting, fun, useful, beautiful things that maybe haven't been made on the lathe before. And I want you to be a part of that. The first thing you can do is follow me on Instagram. I've got a bunch of stuff there that never appears on YouTube. You can see what's coming up in my videos, you can get progress shots. It's a lot of fun. You should also follow the hashtag BeyondBowls, where I'll be specifically highlighting these projects. And I want to encourage my viewers to get in on this. If you've got a lathe, think of something useful or creative or artistic that's never been made on a lathe before and make it. Put it on Instagram and tag it Beyond Bowls. And I'll feature a lot of these on my channel. I'll talk about them. I'll throw some publicity your way when I can. And it's a way that we can all be more creative and have more fun with the tools we already own. And this project is just scratching the surface of all the stuff I have coming up on this channel. I have all sorts of great plans for tool making, using tools in new and interesting ways, and improving your shop on a budget. And a big part of my future plans is Patreon. Right now, I could be making a video about some fancy cabinet I'm making for some rich client, and I used to make videos like that. But there are enough videos like that in the world. What we need are more videos about creativity and problem solving on a budget. And I get to make those videos because my patrons support my content. So think about going over to patreon.com/RexKruger and becoming a supporter. When you do that, not only do you make these videos possible, but you also get a lot of rewards. You get early access to all of my videos. I do blog posts, book reviews, progress updates, Ask Me Anything videos, exclusive content, and tool giveaways. So there are a lot of rewards for being a patron in this channel. And maybe most importantly, you just get to support independent, unsponsored creative content. And I know I'm biased, but I think that's the best part. While I'm on the subject, let me thank my newest patrons. Aaron Sprague, Delmonique Lyons, Chloe, Brendan Fellows, and John Meeker. These are people who have stepped up and thrown money in the hat to keep this channel running, and I appreciate it more than I can say. But I also really appreciate just having people watching my channel. So thanks so much for watching.